$15 million. Thanks for joining us on this week's episode of Lawyers on the Rocks. The Lawyers on the Rocks are Jeremy Eldridge, me, Kurt Nachman, and Adam Crandall. We are hosted by Gideon at Up Next Creative. That's all I got, guys.
I'm Kurt Nachman. I handle personal injury
I'm
cases.
Adam Crandall. I'm an immigration lawyer.
And I'm Jeremy, and the only one that actually goes to court around here. No, look, the reason I asked to not start with the guest is because right now it's April 2021. COVID started end of March 2020, and I had 4 hearings today. Yeah. I had 4 fucking hearings today. That was the most pre-COVID day of all time. In fact,
were any of them in person though?
One was in person.
Did you have
3
to
were
put pants
virtual?
on?
Had to put pants on. But of the 3, I did 1 virtual at home, 2 virtual here, 1 in Towson. However, one of them was a federal court appearance, which I heavily lobbied to have it done at 2:15 instead of 4:30, so that I did not yet miss another podcast. I definitely told the U.S. attorney that. I did not tell the judge that, but I was trying to not disappoint our listenership.
So this week we are joined by Dan Rowe from Nepenthe Brewing Company. He's got a fantastic resume that we were going over right before we jumped on the air. In the brewing industry, he's been all over the place, both in Baltimore and in other parts of the country. I'm really excited to kind of have this conversation with him and break out a little bit into kind of what is I think these guys, they do a lot of interesting things at Nepenthe, and I like picking up their products. And we know one of our guests, Fred Barrett, is an avid home brewer and a huge friend of the brewing company. So,
are there mushrooms in this beer? Because when you say they're doing some interesting things, and then you mention Fred, that makes me feel like there's a psilocybin beer there.
It's a psilocybin.
Do we have Dan in the waiting room, or did he get annoyed with us and jump off?
No, now he's scared that we're talking about him trafficking and controlled dangerous substances in his beer.
There he is.
He's like, actually, I'm tripping right now with Fred. Fred's wearing a onesie.
You're muted there,
me.
Mr. Dan. Hey, man, what's happening?
Hey, how's it going?
Thanks for coming on Lawyers on the Rocks. We really appreciate it for all 6 of our listeners right now. But we're sampling, we wanted to jump into it. We got 2 different beers to sample and, kind of wanted to talk about the brewing process, kind of how you personally got where you are, and then kind of how the brewery got started and got moving forward. So how about tell us a little bit about your path in this industry?
Well, actually I started out as a home brewer, almost 13 years ago. It's hard to believe. But from there, I was in the military, got out of the military, and I was quickly working for other breweries in North Carolina, which is where I was stationed originally. Worked for a few breweries down there, went through a 2-year brewing school. I did some time at Highwire Brewing, and I helped start the East Coast White Labs yeast facility, which ironically, that's where we get most of our yeast from now.
Can you just tell us? Let me interrupt you real quick. Can you tell? Because I think that's super cool, and I used to homebrew a lot. I don't do so much anymore unless I'm with.
He's converted to a home meth lab.
Yeah, it's a home meth lab now.
It's more profitable.
But really, what's the importance of the yeast manufacturers in this industry? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
I mean, a lot of the fermentation obviously really depends on, a quality, clean yeast. And thankfully, White Labs produces that for us. I don't know how much further you want me to go into it, but it's like the heart of the beer, It gives a lot of beers certain characteristics, like what we're drinking right now. First is this Infernal Splendor Helles Lager, which we have Pilsner malt, Munich malt, some German hop varietals, which impart some nice flavors. But we also use a very distinct yeast strain, which I feel, just is a beautiful expression of Munich, Germany. And then it also, with the hops that we use, the Hallertau and Callista, which was relatively newer hop to us using, but I think it really shines in this beer. There's some stone fruit notes. There's a really pronounced toastiness from the malt, but I also feel like the yeast also imparts some of that flavor. I mean, it's a great beer. I'm so excited about it. I'm so excited about all of our lagers right now. It's currently one of our top selling beers in the tap room. Is this Helles, and we also have we had a Maibach. The Maibach just disappeared, unfortunately. So it moved really quickly.
Good thing, right?
It's a good problem to have.
And you guys rotate a ton of beers through both your tap room and your 6-pack and 4-pack delivery, kind of like outsourced service. What kind of, and you guys also have a little bit of a unique business model, right? Where you sell homebrew supplies as well.
So yeah, I guess I can backtrack a little bit. Nepenthe started out as a homebrew shop back in February 2013. Unfortunately, the owners, Brian and Jill, underwent 2 major floods, which destroyed, the original location at the bottom of Falls Road in Hamden, twice in 2014 and 2016. That kind of prompted the expansion of moving into what they kind of wanted all along, was a brewery and beautiful tap room space. But yeah, so it's really admirable how much they have adapted and overcome, all these obstacles to get this brewery going. And we opened that in February of 2018. So yeah, we do sell homebrew supplies, but I think our focus really right now is, we're in the business of selling beer. We've really had to pivot the business model towards distribution and, the cans. So
yeah, and tell us, you're the second guest, or maybe the third guest, kind of in a row, that we've had like kind of the pandemic talk with. How has your business model pivoted during the pandemic, and have you been able to like, how's it been going? Like, have you gotten support from the community? Have you gotten support from, kind of your regular base? How's that been going?
I think people are really excited about the cans. First off, I think our artwork, our artist is fantastic. Is Mike Moses up in the Columbus, Ohio area. He's a tattoo artist that Brian Arnold has had work done through, and that's kind of how a lot of that started. But yeah, so we had the canning line coming in anyway, right prior to the shutdown. Last year, the canning line was ordered by January, and that kind of prompted bringing a second person on, which I came on in January of 2020, and the canning line was in by March. The shutdown happened in March, and it has, we have pivoted to a straight up, distribution model, which wasn't the plan, but it wasn't the plan for a lot of us in Baltimore and, throughout the country. So we've definitely adapted, and we're just kind of kicking ass in the brewery. Just, can release after can release. And, we signed on with Other Side.
Your artwork is fucking crazy.
Yeah,
like
the artwork.
You got to get up close.
Different too.
Well,
it's
and that's
awesome.
like, I'm looking at is that a crow?
There's so much shit going on. And
but there's a lot
great.
going on. And hidden away
Yes.
is the human being eaten on either side of the can, both by the feet and by the head. And I like how we haven't gotten a smile out of you in the last 10 minutes. And clearly you must have been a Marine if you were down in North Carolina.
Yes.
Yeah, you don't hide it.
That's what I did.
You don't hide it well. So
I know.
Yeah, I know. We were going to bring you a pack of crayons to chew on during the episode, but look, my dad was public health service, so I'm not going to fight with you. And I only make those jokes with uniform service guys when you can't be near me or touch me. Shout out to all our veterans out there, including Coop, who's a longtime listener. But this is some fucking cool artwork, man. This is really unique stuff, and that it's nice to see that there's clearly a lot of time being invested in this, and it's not you could spend. When he brought up Fred, I'm like, did Fred draw this? Like, this is some pretty trippy shit. Man. The beer's
So
really
good friend of mine, Dr. Fred Barrett, has been a guest on the show before. He's the one, he does all the home brewing. I know he buys all his homebrew supplies from you guys. And every time he stops by, he always brings at least one or two 4-packs of your brew.
And he runs the
consumption.
psilocybin experiment at Johns Hopkins.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, to put that all together for you, so you understood why I brought him up.
So,
Okay.
Kind of where are the next steps for you guys? Like what's next now that you've pivoted to this kind of distribution model? Like as we roll out of the pandemic, what's going to stay the same and what's going to change?
So I mean, with the distribution model, I mean, we just want to see growth. We've already added more fermenters late or towards the end of last year, and that has really helped us out with kind of, I guess, spreading our wings a little bit as far as experimenting with lager production. We've had a little bit more time to play with as far as, especially with the pandemic, letting things rest in the tank longer, like a lager, and we're just incredibly excited about that. But also, I mean, we hope to just maximize our current facility and think about the future of what's next. I think we have ideas. We just kind of have to get there and get out of this pandemic and just keep pushing forward. And I think I'm just so proud of everything we're coming out with. I think the beer speaks for itself, and I think people are really excited about it. Even at 50% capacity, which we're finally back at in the tap room, I mean, it's crazy how busy we can get with just 50% capacity. It kind of makes us wonder what 100% looks like. So, I mean, yeah, I think just from here, the sky's the limit. I think we just need to keep, making the best beer that we can, and that will influence, growth and dropping more tanks in. And yeah, I mean, it's just right now, it's just me and Brian Arnold doing all of the brewing and packaging production ourselves. It's a lot of work. And I mean, we have some help from another team member that he runs actually the homebrew portion of the company. He's a great help for canning runs, and then we also have our bar manager who helps out usually on canning days. And it's just it's really busy, but it's so much fun.
You sound a little tired, my friend. Maybe if you invite the four of us there,
It's
there.
been a long week.
There's a laugh. He's like, listen to the Hebrew slave offer his free labor. You invite us there, we'll help you fucking can. But I want to leave with a couple 6-packs. We could work something out.
So on that note, let's talk about we're still enjoying our first beer right now, and we're going to sample this as we get through the show. But I wanted to talk about it. So we've got the double IPA Alpaca Fracas. And for anybody that knows, alpacas are fucking crazy.
Yes.
Yeah, I said to Kurt before we came on, and when I looked at the description on the can, I said, I'm pretty sure I'm going to like this. And I just poured a little bit into the glass I have here. And I really like this. This is nice.
It's a very dangerous double IPA. This was actually something that Brian came up with for the first anniversary party. And I think it was just such a hit. I mean, it's just got a really, really, really killer hop combination with the Galaxy Nelson Citra Vic Secret. These are all just extremely choice hops. And it's just really just very dank. There's just really heavy pineapple, heavy grapefruit. I mean, it really is a dangerous beer, and people really like the artwork. I think it's kind of Children of the Corn-esque meets like The Color Out of Space, starring the great Nicolas Cage.
You had me at dank. Once you were like dank and pineapple, I was like, we're gonna get along.
I got some pictures. We'll post them up on the show notes and on the blogs.
Yeah, the cans are fucking scary. Like
every can has like custom artwork.
Yeah, it's pretty cool, man. It's pretty cool. You just don't see a lot of that stuff, and they know I'm more of a whiskey drinker than I'm a beer drinker. And
I can respect that.
Definitely a beer that I'm going to buy. And and like leave the can by my 8-year-old's bed just to scare the shit out of her. Like that alpaca is fucking scary. Can we sip on that one? Can we?
Yeah, yeah. I got glasses. We can sip on that, or we have
Yeah,
enough for all of us to drink.
Yeah, we're missing our server here today.
So, so Dan, give us a hit. Where are you guys located, and what hours are you open, if you know?
So we are located at 3626 Falls Road, right there next to the Avenue in the Hamden neighborhood. I mean, like we're right at the start of it where Falls meets the Avenue, and right before you hop on 83. Mondays we are closed. Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday we're open from 5 to 9 p.m. Fridays we're open from 5 to 10 p.m. Saturdays 12 to 10 p.m. and Sundays 12 to 5 p.m.
That's awesome. Thanks, man. And are you still doing curbside pickup for 6-packs and homebrew stuff?
Yes, absolutely.
All right. That was pretty awesome. I've definitely stopped by and picked up both homebrew supplies and beers while I was picking up homebrew supplies. So I would definitely highly recommend that. They've got a little window. You literally just text somebody, stuff gets dropped right at the window. It's pretty awesome service.
This motherfucker's been homebrewing behind our back. I feel like I'm getting cheated on.
Thanks so much for joining us, Dan. We really appreciate it. Cheers.
Thanks, man.
Thanks for having me on. I really appreciate everybody's support.
Definitely. We'll check you out soon at the shop.
Right. Thanks.
You guys been up there? Have you guys been in the tap room there?
No.
It's a cool spot.
Yeah.
It's really cool.
That should be a prerequisite from now on, that whenever we did it with Checker Spot, and I feel like we just couldn't do it for Nepenthe because we didn't get the opportunity given time this week. But I feel like that's the prerequisite from now on, is we do an little R&D in the tap room.
Recon.
Yeah.
No, it's a great spot. It's very Hamden. It's very, it fits that neighborhood perfectly, but we were there obviously pre-COVID, and it's fucking fun. Like it's just a fun crowd in there, and the beer's really good.
Have you ever heard Adam say he doesn't like going to a brewery? Like every brewery, Checker Spot, he's like, "Doug, it's just a great time. I bring my kids, let them run around, drink a bunch of beers. The cops don't really care,
Yeah, he's right though. Nepenthe has these really big windows that they usually keep open if the weather is nice. So it feels open and airy, and yeah, it really is a fun place to hang out.
Did you guys also know, on the topic of the Hamden neighborhood, that the Royal Farms in Hamden is the original Royal Farms? That is like the birthplace.
The one on 36th Street?
Yep.
Get the fuck out of here.
Really? They have the worst chicken tenders out of all the Royal Farms that I've ever visited.
Because they
that
make
one and the one by his
10,000
house.
of them a day because of all the people coming out of the bars.
There may be, but there is a big difference between the chicken at, for instance, that Royal Farms, the one by where you used to live, by the stadium. We know our good and bad Royal Farms. Once you go out to Snow Hill to the immigration facilities, we know the good ones and the bad ones. But I don't want some like barely breaded tenders and Western fries.
It's where it all started.
That's where we are.
Speaking of barely breaded,
I'm so excited. I'm so excited because for the first time in a podcast, I told Kurt, I told Kurt to not read the quotes because I have a game for us to play.
It took me a second because I hadn't looked at the notes, but when I looked and saw what the first story was, I was like,
no, do me a favor, Adam.
Wow.
Don't read the quotes.
I'm not,
and let Kurt go through the story, and our listeners can join in for the game we're going to play.
This
go
is
ahead,
good.
Kurt.
So all right, what do I need to get out my do I need to monitor the Facebook the Facebook?
No, Gideon I'm sure can tell us. I mean, we have 72 listeners right now.
We have 6.
We have 74 listeners right now. You gotta lie. Like you need to treat this podcast like fucking
3
Fox News.
And 2 of them are
and
Katie
we have
Mims.
49 downloads afterward. We have like 100 downloads afterwards. Stop saying that we have 3 listeners. We got 49 listeners right now. It's great.
I wore these shoes to the immigration office today. You okay with that?
We're not going to talk about the fact that you're dressed like you work at Banana Republic today.
High wire, yes. We had a question. Were you at the Durham or Asheville high wire location? So, Asheville. Katie, he was at the Asheville location, which Gideon answered that question for us. And I'm doing a Durham brewery tour tomorrow. Yes, that sounds like. Did we just get an invite?
Yeah, let's go.
Katie?
I'm kind of driving that way. It's kind of close.
No, it's not.
Williamsburg? No. Okay. Really. Well, We'll see what we can do.
I mean,
all right.
it's south of Ford Avenue, so for you, it's all the same, right?
It is all the same.
Yeah.
It's not in Baltimore County.
That's a close drive.
What are you going to do if we have to go sample at Baltimore County Brewing? Because we've got them coming on maybe next Friday.
I got my TSA pre-clearance, so I can just get right on the plane real quick.
To Canada?
Yeah.
Okay. So, speaking of barely breaded,
Do it.
Matthew Getz.
This is the entire Matt Gates episode. We should just call this
Gates. Is that how you say his name?
Yeah, enemy
Yeah.
enemy at the gates.
Enemy at the gates. Sex, drugs, and rock and roll all in the halls of Congress. So we have 2 rules that you need to follow at Lawyers on the Rocks. If you are under criminal investigation for anything, shut the fuck up. Shut up. Just stop talking. Mr. Gates is under investigation for alleged sex trafficking, and he was given a platform by Fox News host Tucker Carlson to tell his side of the story.
Which always works out well for politicians and people wanting to clear their name on TV.
Gates
R. Kelly
ended up botching the softball interview so thoroughly that Carlson ended up telling his millions of viewers that it was. I'm not sure what the game is we're supposed to play.
Oh, we'll get to the game. Just don't read the quote. You can read the Carlson quotes.
Oh,
Don't
okay.
read the
I can read
Gates
the Carlson quotes. One of the weirdest interviews I've ever conducted. At various points in the interview, Gates is accusing Carlson of engaging in activity. He's denying that he committed activity. It's a completely bizarre interview. I watched it. If you get a chance, it'll be in the show notes. You should definitely watch it. So the bottom line is, shut the fuck up.
Or invoke your Fifth Amendment privilege against self-incrimination, choose to remain silent, and contact an attorney, and simply inform police that you wish to have an attorney present if they wish to ask you any questions.
But we do have an important rule number 2. If you're under federal investigation, do not hang out with a legal weed dealer on a trip to Bahamas with a bunch of hookers.
He's a hand surgeon.
No,
That's
that's not a hand surgeon. He's a weed dealer.
He's a hand. It
He
said he
owns
was a,
marijuana. No, he owns marijuana
I
dispensaries.
thought he was a hand model.
he's
I'm
a hand
so
surgeon and
confused.
cannabis entrepreneur is the way.
That's weed dealer. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
That's the white man version of weed dealer. Let's
Oh,
call
100%.
let's call it what it is.
So before we play the game, I don't know if the update made it in.
The update did
before.
not make it in.
So the
no.
update is that this the hand model / drug dealer has now agreed to plead guilty.
/ former tax collector, by the way.
Right, the Florida like Pinellas County tax collector. He has agreed to plead guilty and is now at least presumed to be cooperating with the feds, which brings us to
Well, and his
rule
part of
number
it had
3
been
at
going to
Lawyers
2
on the
years,
Rocks,
which is
when your co-conspirator pleads guilty and seems to be cooperating, run, motherfucker.
all right. So this is a good time to play the game, and then we can actually tell the story. So the game we're going to play is who said this quote, Matt Gaetz or Marilyn Mosby?
Ooh,
thought it was gonna
like-
be- Is it
Here's the-
Mosby
Okay,
or R.
let's just
Kelly?
say that this
I wrote
this
some
segment
of
has
this
not
down.
been pre-cleared through the
You ready?
producer and director of the show.
Here we go. You guys can guess. So I do believe there are people at the Department of Justice that are trying to smear me. Matt Gaetz or Marilyn Mosby.
Ooh.
If you inserted the Inspector General's office, I would say it'd be Marilyn Mosby, but I'm going to guess Matt Gaetz.
Matt Gaetz.
But
But
I think both technically.
But I do agree that with you that being falsely accused is one of the worst things that can happen, and you see it all the time.
Gates.
You were accused of something that you did not do. You would feel the same way about a terrible sex act. Gates.
I don't even understand
Look.
what that means. When you break that down into its like subparts, which do you feel bad about? Because there's like a dangling modifier there, right? Like, is it the sex act that you feel bad about?
That's the problem. So all these quotes are obviously Matt Gaetz, right? Because I'm reading them from the article, but they all could be Marilyn Mosby. Here's the next one. The allegations here go well beyond mere traveling. It's unclear how my travel records have anything to do with any of this.
I'm pretty sure that has everything to do with all of it, right?
What is happening is an extortion of me and my family involving a former Department of Justice official.
You know, he's actually right about that, though.
Yeah, that's the weird thing.
That's what's so fucking weird about this story, is that do you know enough about this to speak intelligently about it? Because
I've
it's
read all
so-
the stuff you sent me.
Yeah.
all right, so can you go into it? Because
Can I
fuzzy
read the
on it.
last quote and then we can go
Yeah,
into the
yeah,
story? I'm a well-known, outspoken politician, and I guess that's out of style in a lot of parts of the country right now.
Well, so
Like he's like the white male Marilyn Mosby.
No, but
Like everything this guy says
this is
like
not Mosby
perfectly
though.
for her.
This is a play out of the Donald Trump playbook. And
Well,
we've
you talked about
this
that, yeah.
over and over. Now we are seeing politicians just saying it's fake, it's fake, it's fake, it's fake. I saw something that there was a gentleman who is a Republican in Alabama who was running for Senate, and he denied having
Jeff
an
Sessions.
affair, denied having an affair, denied having an affair. Then they released a telephone call with him and his mistress talking about having sex. And so he said it was all fake news. And then all of a sudden he dropped out of the Senate race. Like,
and
you
said,
have
I
to
never
be-
denied it.
I never denied it.
Yeah.
No, I just, with thought and prayer, I want to spend more time with my family. It's like, it is the new playbook. Whether you're a Republican or a Democrat, it's the new playbook.
Deny,
because it
deny,
works.
deny.
Yeah. Except Matt Gaetz doesn't quite, I think he understands the playbook, but much like, I don't know, pick a bad NFL quarterback, the execution of the plays isn't always there. Because the one quote that you skipped over, it didn't fit in your game, but this was my favorite quote. Providing for flights and hotel rooms for people that you're dating who are of legal age is not a crime. He basically just said, I fucking provided for flights and hotel rooms for these women, right?
I mean, that was the only thing Marilyn didn't do in the article.
Was
So,
it
yes,
admit?
of course, I didn't read that portion.
No, I
If
know,
she
but
did, I might be a bigger fan of her if she admitted
this
to
is why
lying.
you tell clients to
publicly.
shut the fuck up until they stumble into say, and basically admitting.
Well, so
guilt.
Here's some other interesting components in the next story when he travels with the legal weed dealer, Dr. Jason Pirro.
Doctor, see, he's a hand
Pirozzolo.
surgeon.
He's a hand surgeon.
I think
in
that's
July-
so fucking weird.
In a statement to CBS News, a spokesperson from Gates's office, Representative Gates, has never paid for sex, nor has he had sex with an underage girl. What began with blaring headlines about sex trafficking has now turned into a general fishing exercise about vacations, consensual relationships with adults. Yesterday, we learned some of these nonsense pardon stories turned out to be false. Today, it's just more euphemism. It's interesting to watch the Washington wheels grind so hard every time one of their falsehoods gets knocked down. Then the next line, and this is great. Investigators also want to know if Gates was accepting paid escorts in exchange for political access or favors. In a July 2018 podcast, Pirozzolo told ganjapreneur.com that Gates was working to introduce federal legislation that would boost medical research of cannabis.
That sounds like a very reputable website that we should probably be blogging for. Ganjapreneur.
So
There was no quid pro quo.
So also related to this, Matt Gaetz, and I think I'm accurate about this. So he was the only member of the House of Representatives who didn't vote for the anti-sex trafficking law. Like literally the only fucking holdout. But
I mean, he looks, if I looked up the word sex trafficker, or like I had to draw a picture of someone like Jeffrey Epstein took this guy with him to the island, Matt Gaetz looks like that guy.
yeah.
Like, I'm sorry. I mean, he just looks like he committed this crime. I know that looks horrible. It sounds horrible because I'm a defense attorney, but everything about this dude is just swarmy. And
So here's the question.
like he
Jeremy.
made Tucker Carlson look credible.
Which is
Here's the
fucking
question,
powerful.
Eldridge.
Would I represent him? Yeah, obviously.
No.
No, sorry.
So as everyone knows, we're sitting with an elected official who has tremendous power, tremendous sway, tremendous influence.
Did Adam run? I'm
And I'm
elected.
wondering, where the fuck is my trip to the Bahamas with the hookers? I'm just saying, man, like you're falling short here.
Yeah, so my wife Shantae Aldridge would kill me before I did any of those political favors. And the podcast would then be 2 hookers on the rocks, not 3. Gideon would be sitting in my chair.
Well, listen,
But
I want to
what
say
I think it's funny is that like all of these stories literally they're always like junior congressmen from Florida. Like every one of these, like the last politician, remember the guy that spent like $100,000 redoing his office, and then they found out about his adultery. It's like a junior senator or whatever, or junior congressman for fucking Florida. Like it's always these Floridians.
Well, this story has been evolving daily. So the other element of this story that broke yesterday or today is that apparently members of the former Trump administration have come out and said that Matt Gaetz approached them about the possibility of a preemptive blanket pardon.
Yeah,
from,
and the administration
Trump.
was like, no, that doesn't exist.
Right. But I mean,
that should definitely be used as evidence against him.
For sure.
Like if you go asking for forgiveness for something, yeah, a preemptive blanket pardon.
Listen,
can you just see how drunk him and Trump were? And he's like, Donnie. Can you give me one of them blanket pardons?
I mean, these are like guys that like played too much Monopoly and would like sit on the get out of jail free card and like try to, like my son who plays and he's like, I'll sell this to you for $500. I'm like, I could just like sit in jail for 3 rolls or pay $50 and get out of jail. I don't need your get out of jail free card. I feel like Matt Gaetz is like, hey, Donald, let me get that get out of jail free card.
It's exactly what it is. And his fiance's brother owned Oculus, right? So you know that he thinks like he has a ton of financial backing, and she hasn't left him yet. But the moment this fucker pleads, because he will play, her ass is gone.
Oh yeah.
He met her at CPAC too. That was great.
Next week we should dive a little bit deeper into this on the whole story about how his father was approached by there was definitely a shakedown that involved like information on the Clintons or something. It was fucking weird. I don't remember it now.
Yeah, I remember reading that in one of the articles and I was like, huh?
Yeah, and that's the
reason that he had sex with underage girls. Like, of course, like this is purely vindictive. It has nothing to do with his criminal penis. You're right.
Listener Katie says that apparently Gaetz also paid for sex via Venmo and did not make the transaction private.
Ooh, yeah. Venho on Venmo.
Yeah, Venmo.
That's right. That's right. I did see that, and I think they were able to identify the transactions because then so I think
money went to the girl.
Right. He gave $900 to the hand surgeon ganjapreneur, and then the ganjapreneur turned around and dispersed a total of $900 to 3 different women, and in the subject line wrote like tuition.
That's like what I used to write on Jeremy's draw checks back in the day.
No, you wrote way worse. Like goat fucking. And the bank lady's like, what's goat fucking? Is that like a new thing? You have goats? What do you name them?
Oh,
did you pay taxes on your ass?
I feel like part of me feels like this entire segment could have been, I can't believe it's not Baltimore.
Well, Jeremy tried to make it that. I mean, it's basically,
I mean, we're not that far.
We're not that
come
far.
on. Yeah. We are not that
most
far.
certainly could have happened in Baltimore, but for the travel to the Bahamas.
I mean, if you think about it, we had, was it Chuck Nabbit, the wealthy Baltimore County guy that was having sex with, he's very wealthy, very influential. He was indicted by the feds because the pimp turned on everybody. You can't trust a motherfucking pimp. And he got indicted and he pled. This was all in the last year. And he was having sex with a drug addicted woman and then extorting her for money, saying he could pay her whatever he wanted. And then, of course, the pimp got tired of not getting paid. He got arrested and flipped on him. So we've definitely had wealthy, influential people go down, so to speak, for going down. So that could happen. I would combine was it Chuck Nabbit with Marilyn Mosby here, and we got it covered.
Well, I actually think, looking ahead at the next couple of podcast episodes, Matt Gaetz could it'll probably be a recurring segment.
This is definitely going to be a reoccurring segment
this week in Matt Gaetz's sexcapades.
Does his head not look like a human caricature? Like at my bar mitzvah, we had a caricature artist, and it was like giant head, little body. He looked like Bobby from Bobby's World. He's got this huge fucking head.
Have you seen? Like maybe it's just like the websites and stuff that I read, but every story about this that includes artwork or a photo of him is him taking a selfie in front of a group of like 13 and 14-year-old girls. I kid you not. Like, and it's not just the same one they keep using. It's like different fucking ones. Like the dude just finds himself in front of a group of underage girls.
Adam spent a lot of time
Repeatedly.
looking at Matt Gates selfies. That's all I'm hearing right now.
I mean, it's not even fascinating. It's not the right word.
Listener
It's
Katie
just
needs
like
to talk to her brother about the selfies.
it's like
you're
the
looking
train
at.
wreck thing, right? Like you cannot turn away. Like you're like,
He
what could
looks like
possibly go
he
wrong
looks
next?
like a Team America puppet.
Ooh.
Listener Katie, thank you.
That was
Thank you.
good.
All right.
Can you start changing her name just so it seems like we have more than one listener?
Well, we also have angry listener Peter who says, "Why the fuck didn't you post an advance warning this morning that we were podcasting?"
And or you got
posted it
all the facts
yesterday.
wrong from the article.
We
I'm
posted
sure.
it yesterday. You
Yeah,
just got to
sorry.
check your feeds.
Sorry,
yo.
Peter.
Yep.
We should have a separate like Peter announcement just for Peter. So we have it on our calendar to pump the podcast on Tuesdays and Thursdays.
So you're saying he needs a special Peter pumping?
We need a special Peter
needs a
podcast pump.
Oh yeah,
on Friday mornings.
We can pump Peter. That's
Let's
not
pump,
a problem.
Let's pump the
Do you wanna
podcast
pump
for Peter. Yeah,
All
on
right,
Friday.
we'll pump you, Peter.
Yeah.
All right. In this week's segment of I can believe it is Baltimore.
Yeah.
Baltimore police officer was indicted for lying about being a city resident for the Republican nomination for mayor in 2020. Baltimore City grand jury indicted Ivan Gonzalez, a Baltimore police officer and 2020 candidate for mayor, on charges of perjury, falsifying voter registration, false oath, false entry in a public record. He's alleged to have provided false information under oath in his filings to the Baltimore City Board of Elections during his 2020 campaign for mayor, claiming that he lived in the city. According to documents, he actually lived in Baltimore County. If convicted, he faces 10 years in jail. Trial date has not been set.
You
We
know,
both
hold on.
know him.
He's a
like,
good dude.
Me and
man.
Kurt
I
hold on.
really
both
I
know
like this
Ivan
dude a lot.
really well.
No,
That's
I
like
got
this
this one.
dude.
I got this one.
you
all
can
right?
do it because this is
I got
know
this
him.
one. You guys, I got this one. I don't need the documents. I don't need tax filings. I don't need mortgage statements. You know how I know he doesn't live in the city?
He's a Baltimore City cop.
There you go.
Oh, come on. I can play that.
So I will interject.
I was just
there.
surprised he didn't
So
live in
I
York,
will-
PA.
No.
I'm surprised he lives in Maryland.
So I'll interject and I'll push back a little bit. I know for a fact that he used to live in the city. He rehabbed a house in the city back when we were prosecutors back in the day. And here's my question. There are certain judges that don't live in the city. There are certain politicians that perhaps live up in Harford County.
Well, hold on. Let's actually name them, because there are two that have been publicly outed for that. And one of them was,
Jack Young.
well, we'll start with Belinda Conaway. So Belinda Conaway actually had an ethics complaint filed against her. It was a petition to challenge her residency. She was at one time, well, now she's the Register of Wills in Baltimore City. And they said she had a home in Randallstown, as did her father, Frank Conaway. And so she was challenged for not living in the city. So we've been there before, but she wasn't criminally prosecuted for it. But it was clear she didn't live in the city. Same with Frank Conaway. Clear he didn't live in the city. Didn't touch him. Tharu Vignaraja had a petition to challenge his residency filed against him because his wife and children lived in Columbia, Howard County. It was clear that while he maintained a condo in the city, that he didn't reside there. There was a lot of evidence showing that he didn't actually live there at the time, like not having a bed and things of that nature. He was not prosecuted, and the petition to challenge his residency lost. What throws me about this story,
how about Judge Gatewood?
Judge Gatewood arguably lived in Anne Arundel County.
Right.
Yes.
And he had some issues related to that, related to a property in Anne Arundel County.
Yes. Except for Gatewood was known to have owned a ton of properties in Baltimore City. But I think you're making my point for me. We can each name 4 to 5 people that were investigated,
Democrats,
and never touched. Ivan, now, where he fucked up is lying about it. I mean, that if you read the extended portion of the article,
right,
that's part of what they're saying, is that he was, even when interviewed, that he led people to believe that he actually, resided in the city. But you're not required to live here 100% of the time. You're required to have a primary residence in the city, and then a majority sort of fractional stay here. But this issue keeps rearing its ugly head. Frankly, do I have a problem with it? No. It just feels like, given the other people I've named, like,
Well, how about
going to Conway actually held
but
off.
the Court of Appeals has addressed this issue with regard to judges, and they give a very, very, very broad interpretation to residents. There were some questions when Governor O'Malley was in the state house for 8 years, and
living
his
in
wife,
Annapolis and being a judge in Baltimore City
she was a
District
judge
Court.
in Baltimore City District Court, and so the question was, is she able to sit? And the Court of Appeals said yes, and Judicial Ethics Committee said yes, and it wasn't a problem. And so, we have
Once again, though, because that house was not their primary residence, they were living in the.
no, they had sold the house in the city.
But
They did not
but they
have
didn't
any
own.
city.
What I mean is, they
residents
didn't
at the time.
own the gubernatorial residence.
Oh, correct.
That's what
Correct.
I was saying. So
Right.
here, Ivan just kind of took it too far. It seems, as far as other people own the property, it wasn't his primary residence. It just kind of smacks of bullshit, given no one went after Theroux, no one went after Belinda Conaway, no one went after Frank Conaway. And this has been going on for years and years and years. And really only in Baltimore City.
You guys seem interested in splitting hairs on this a little bit, which is fine. But I mean, don't you think, I mean, is it a crazy position to take that elected officials should live in the district that they represent?
Oh, no. That's not what
We're 100%.
Yeah, and I'm not saying he shouldn't have been charged. I'm just saying when Meryl, to compare it to Meryl Mosby just briefly, when Marilyn comes out and says, you're always going after black politicians, I hate when she says that, because while there's discriminatory prosecution against African Americans, all of the black main politicians that have been prosecuted in Baltimore have been dirty as fuck, right? So when you read this story about Ivan, should he have been prosecuted? Yes, obviously. I mean, if you look at the facts and you assume the facts is true, there's probable cause to believe he committed these crimes. However, when you look at the other people that have not been prosecuted and done some of the exact same activities, that's where I think it's much different, where you have an established pattern of individuals who have engaged in similar conduct. And, but we also have a different Maryland state prosecutor right now, right?
So that was my question. Is this the office of the state prosecutor?
Yes. So we have Chuck Howard, who used to be a Baltimore City State's attorney, Charles Blomquist. It's a very, very small office. They only handle electoral crimes and political misconduct or malfeasance. So, that office did change hands. So I can't say whether Mr. Howard should have looked at these other officials I'm naming, because they've all happened within, really, 4 to 10 years ago, really. So I'm just hoping maybe we should see more of this. So no, I don't disagree with you, Adam. I don't think Kurt does. They should live in that city. We've just seen favoritism towards giving people this flexibility to just make up wherever they want to live for as long as we've been in Baltimore.
Well, and I appreciate the depth we went into. This is like far, far, far more depth than we've ever gone into with like alligators in the backseat of a car or anything. But I thought it was important for the exact reason why you highlighted it. What's the standard? Is the standard being applied consistently? And I think that's one of the things in the law that's really important on the criminal defense side of things, right? Is if your client's going to go to jail, he's going to go to jail. But you want consistency. You want logic and reason, so that if there's an issue, you can rebut that logic and reason with your own version of what is appropriate in sentencing, in disposition, in prosecution.
But this issue, I just want to make a couple of remarks. This issue, though, is a lot more rampant. And I feel like until these kind of situations blow up, people don't think they exist. And then once they do, they realize how frequent they are. There was a large contingent of people in Howard County, for instance, Shane Pendergrass, who's a delegate. There's a lot of sort of rumblings about whether she lives in California as opposed to Maryland. You have, and if you look at the Board of Elections website, you can pull the complaints for petitions to challenge residency or the complaints filed with the Board of Elections, as far as there are cases going back 5 or 10 years, especially I believe in Wacomico County for a sheriff's race. When there were two, I think, McDermott's running in Worcester County. One of them may not have lived in the county. So that's stuff to pay attention to, because what ends up happening is when you elect somebody that doesn't actually live in the district, they don't have maybe a vested interest in the district, or they're spending time out of the county. And the last thing I'll say is the Ben Jealous race. When Ben Jealous ran against Larry Hogan took a picture standing in front of California Boulevard out on the Eastern Shore, if you guys remember, and was making fun of how much time Ben Jealous had spent in California. So these issues about whether you're participating in your jurisdiction, whether you live in your jurisdiction, how active you are in your jurisdiction are going to continue to be issues. And the one that was filed against Dhruv Vingaraja is the first one that I've ever seen go to court for a petition to challenge residency. But I anticipate more and more of this as we go forward and people continue to file more of these Maryland Public Information Act requests. And where you live is obviously public record. You can find it on the State Department of Assessment and Taxation.
But how about the bottom line? It's important that someone who is elected to represent a group of people live with that fucking group of people.
Yeah.
Well,
It's very simple. I mean, how can you feel for a Baltimore City voter's plight and problems if you live in Harford County or Baltimore County? You can't.
Well, and I think we see this on the national level too, right? Where, Washington, D.C., rather than being the place where Congress meets and convenes and then, representatives and senators go home. I think what, the trend has been that D.C. has become just a permanent landing spot for a lot of these.
The political class.
Yeah, absolutely. Sure. And so, I mean, how much time do you think what was his name? Paul Ryan was spending in, whatever fucking podunk shithole in Wisconsin he was from? Not
Wisconsin's
much.
A pretty nice place, man.
Not where whatever.
No, but the point is that these guys, it's the difference between Elijah Cummings, who during the protests in Baltimore in 2015 was evident every single night.
I give him props for that.
Oh yeah, man. And I mean, look, Catherine Pugh, to her credit,
crowds.
Yeah, him and Pugh every night were fucking. I mean, that was one thing that did make me like her, frankly, was they were out there every fucking night, man, working and trying to bring peace to the city. And you look at some of these other politicians, and I think you're 100% right. There's definitely a track record frankly, on both sides of being a little out of touch and not going home.
Yeah.
Now, you can't say that about Marjorie Greene, or you can't say that about Bobo, right? Because Bobo's got a restaurant called Rifle where you can carry a gun. She's home.
So I have breaking news brought to us by listener Peter. Although unsurprising breaking news, House Ethics Committee is investigating Representative Matt Gaetz.
Okay, what about all the other congressmen? If this game is true, that he's supposedly there was a points-based fantasy fuck scoring system of, and you come on, you guys read that shit about if you fuck. There's apparently one female congresswoman that if they fucked, you won the whole game.
What?
Oh yeah. So there were other congressmen that were engaged in this fantasy fuck fest with Matt Gaetz. I'm waiting for that stuff to come out. That's this whole thing about.
I'm gonna task you with finding that fucking score.
Yeah, I definitely nicknamed it Fantasy Fuck Fest.
Did you guys see there was an op-ed written by Katie Hill about, you guys are familiar with Katie Hill?
Listener Katie.
No, not to be confused with listener Katie. But Katie Hill was a representative who got
California
pushed out for sexting.
Yeah.
She got pushed out unceremoniously, and then here we have this guy Gaetz.
Well, hold on, wasn't she involved in a throuplet with one of her staffers as well?
Yes.
Yeah, there was a little more.
She was just having an affair with him.
Her,
I think.
It was a bublet.
I don't know. Isn't that the way it always goes now?
Yeah.
I don't know. I can't keep track of congressmen apparently. But you're right. It does feel a little unfair that she got put out.
Oh, the listener Bruce says AOC is the one that they win. She's kind of cute.
Wow.
Kurt, that is absolutely not the point.
Wow.
That's how you know we're on a show with all men. None of us knew what to say.
No, wow.
I would have gone Hillary Clinton, but hey.
Thanks for that breaking news, Peter. I'm pretty sure you just broke the podcast.
Elizabeth Warren. Yes, that was
all right.
hard.
We've got one more segment here, I think.
Let's do the Kavanaugh segment and say I didn't read the Clarence Thomas stuff.
No, the Clarence Thomas stuff is good, but it's long.
He only put Clarence Thomas on here so the entire podcast could be men who sexually harass women. Let's get all for any of the listeners, we have an HR guest coming on in 2 weeks. She owns an HR company. We've never had anyone from HR. We're actually doubling the podcast and HR training for the firm. So we're getting all of our fucking discriminatory material out now, so that it's like a Jewish mikvah. It's a cleansing for the law firm.
Here, I got this one, Kurt. You want me to introduce this story?
Go for it.
Dude, you got Brett Kavanaugh and Clarence Thomas. This couldn't have been any more sexual harassing.
We're gonna table Clarence.
Did you not realize how this looked? This was like the Bible of sexual harassing fucking politicians and judges. Great.
So here's the segue. You ready?
Yes.
Speaking of Matt Gaetz, Brett Kavanaugh. Senator Sheldon Whitehouse, probably my favorite senator's name, is not kidding around about tracing dark money and how it has become an influence in the selection of judges for the federal bench. So this was from a couple weeks ago. There was a hearing. White House chairs one of the Senate committees, one of the toothless committees that just, he sits in front of C-SPAN in an empty room and says shit. And this is what came out. This is why I sent this story in to talk about. I think this is
fascinating.
Fucking fascinating.
It's fascinating. It's totally fascinating.
Other questions from White House. Sheldon Whitehouse, not the White House, addressed Kavanaugh's unusual debt history. We are, of course, talking here about Brett Kavanaugh, the Matt Gaetz of the Supreme Court.
Oh, Jesus.
Not long after
I
Trump...
thought Clarence Thomas was the Matt Gaetz of the Supreme Court.
Clarence Thomas is the
like
Brett Kavanaugh of the Supreme Court before Brett Kavanaugh was the Matt Gaetz of the Supreme Court. There's a long lineage of this
Sorry
stuff.
for interrupting.
That's okay. Not long after Trump nominated him, Kavanaugh, the Washington Post reported that since joining the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals as a judge in 2006, Kavanaugh had run up a significant amount of debt that often appeared to exceed the value of his cash and investment assets. His debts on 3 credit cards, as well as a loan against his retirement account, totaled between $60,000 and $200,000 in 2016.
Seems like a very accurate range.
The next year, when he was nominated for the position on the Supreme Court, his debts vanished. When he appeared before the Senate Judiciary Committee for his confirmation hearing, his financial disclosure form listed no liabilities aside from his $815,000 mortgage on his, we would presume, primary residence. Is that the term that we're using?
Yes.
Primary residence. His disclosures, interestingly, don't show any large financial gifts, outside income, or even a gambling windfall, such as when Justice Sonia Sotomayor, when she was up for the Supreme Court, had listed on her financial disclosures an $8,283 jackpot she hit in a Florida casino in 2008.
Jackpot!
Hell yeah. So the long and the short is, Kavanaugh gets a seat on the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals, racks up somewhere between $60,000 and $200,000 worth of consumer debt. And right around the same time that he's being considered for a seat on the Supreme Court, the debt's gone. He lists no windfalls, no additional income on his financial disclosures. And the point of all this, and where Sheldon Whitehouse is going with all this, is, sort of tracing the dark money that's circling around. And obviously this is happening in politics. I think to the extent that it's happening with the judiciary is a newer phenomenon, not, a hundreds of years old phenomenon, but more like a probably 30 to 40-year-old phenomenon. Right. And it's fucked up.
So, I'll push back just a little bit on you. So there's a big difference between being 60 grand in debt and 200 grand in debt.
Mm-hmm.
And these ethics disclosure forms, they have ranges that you report. What you also don't know is you don't know if he inherited money. Maybe somebody could have passed away in his family.
Would that not be required to be disclosed on a financial
a
financial disclosure for the United States Supreme Court? I would bet that they
that's the other thing. It doesn't say where the disclosure form was filed. It could have been something for the DC Circuit.
That's because this sounds like Nick Mosby going, I had some financial issues that none of you are going to know, and I pulled out $200,000 from my IRA.
Let me ask a better question. Why wasn't this asked at his confirmation hearing?
I don't think they knew about it. That's the way it read to me. I assumed in reading this that they were unaware. They didn't catch it on his financial forms, which doesn't make any sense because that's submitted. So even on the local level, you get to see a judicial application. It's 25 pages and you're required to put in all of this financial information. So I can only imagine what a Supreme Court or a DC bar application looks like, especially as that's the feeding ground for the Supreme Court.
I mean, are you expected to put history in there though? Like maybe if the debt was already gone, then he has nothing to disclose in that. So it doesn't look like there's any malfeasance there.
Well, no, but that's the year before, that's a large
sort of
amount
what they were
debt.
alluding to in the article.
That's what the article says, is that by the time he's up for the nomination for the Supreme Court, he lists no liabilities.
Right. So is the expectation that the money was being fueled to him at the DC Circuit, or that it was like in anticipation of his rise to the Supreme Court?
I think probably the latter. I mean, it seems to be what's being suggested.
Yeah, we're
But-
going to pay
but
all
you
your
don't
debt
know the
off, and you're going to
answer,
do what we
and
want.
I think the bigger issue is correct, which is there's a lot of dark money that circles around these issues. And, you know, I mean, one of the things that did bother me a little bit was the lack of proper vetting that went on with a couple of nominees under the Trump administration. You know, there's a reason why these investigations should take a month or two, or a month.
Here's why this didn't surprise me. It didn't surprise me for the exact reason you just said, which is the undercurrent of the Trump administration, as far as federal judges that were not on the Supreme Court, were that he nominated more attorneys that had never been in a courtroom, never tried any cases. And the American Bar Association, which is not like a clear-cut Democratic organization, it's the Lawyers Guild, for lack of a better phrase, that not recommended these people, which is about as strong of a lack of a recommendation.
Not even
as you
not
can get.
recommended.
Like,
There's their ratings are qualified or not qualified.
yeah, and Trump had a nasty habit of putting in people who really just had no history or no business being judged.
Well, in fairness, it wasn't necessarily Trump. It's Mitch McConnell. It's the
machine.
The
It's
machine.
the machine.
It was the
that's-
the reason for getting out of bed in the morning for the Republican Party for the past probably 15 to 20 years in Congress has been to nominate federal judges. I mean, that has been the playbook.
But when
for
you
a
put
while now.
inexperienced people in power, they rely on you to make decisions. And I think that's the reason why we didn't see Merrick Garland put in. You know, when you have people that are just eminently qualified, you know, like Amy Coney Barrett looks like she wanted to be a Supreme Court justice from the time that she was birthed.
Right.
Okay. I don't agree with her political ideology. However, you know, frankly, she had a lot more experience, although she had never litigated. I mean, that was the whole thing. And people used to say that about RBG, right? Except RBG did litigate. She argued in the Supreme Court,
Right.
and she was a Columbia law professor.
Well,
so
we
she
should
had actually
also
litigated.
we should follow up on this soon. I think on a segment in an upcoming podcast, because Biden is now starting to put up nominees, and these go widely under the radar unless you're a lawyer and you give a shit about this kind of stuff. If it's not a Supreme Court nominee, most people aren't paying attention. But Biden has already put out his first sort of push of nominees for the lower federal court, for the district courts. And what we're seeing so far, and we should look at this and look at some of the nominees and their qualifications. We're seeing more, not just experienced litigators, but from all walks of life and from all sides of the issues. So, for example, former public defenders,
Debbie Boardman in Baltimore, for example, was first assistant public defender. She's now been nominated to the bench. And
this is not as rare at the state court level. Obviously, I mean, the ranks where you're pulling from are either from OPD.
No, but she's our
or the
first
state's
federal
attorney.
judge in Maryland that I'm aware of.
I think on the federal bench, it's a rarity to have, former public defenders.
Judge Dennis.
Yeah.
Judge Dennis.
Or even look in New York right now, the U.S. attorney for the Southern District is Williams, who is African-American male, involved in white collar prosecution, had a lot of experience in the office. He's the first African-American U.S. attorney. I think a lot of us expect Eric Barron to be the next U.S. attorney, because U.S. attorneys go along with judges in the sense that they're both nominated by the United States president. They tend to be of the same political affiliation as the sitting president, and they all obviously have to be approved. So we're all kind of waiting to see if Eric Barron, who's a delegate right now, is going to end up being the next U.S. attorney. He did a short stint in the PG County State's Attorney's Office, Baltimore City State's Attorney's Office, and works at a local law firm here in Baltimore.
All right. Well,
let's talk about this IPA real quick.
Yeah. So it is dank.
It's super dank.
It's super dank.
Can you taste the pineapple?
I can taste the dankness.
Yeah, it's real hoppy. It's also, I like the color on it. I like a hazy IPA. I guess this would qualify as sort of a hazy, lighter colored. I'm not sure where that comes from. Probably the particular hops that they're using.
Pineapple.
But yeah, it's got a lot of citrus, and
it is a little alcohol-y.
Oh yeah.
I think
Gideon gave a face. Gideon's got an opinion to share.
8.1%.
Yeah.
Yeah, 8-1. I mean, he said when he was talking about it that it's dangerous, and I think it's because it goes down pretty easy, and then you look at the can and you're like, oh, this is an 8% beer, which is not for the faint of heart. But yeah, I really like the way that the citra hops that's in it that probably is bringing out a lot of those pineapple and other flavors that he was talking about balances against there's a much more bitter hops, and so like your palate sort of travels through this beer in a way where you start off with some of those citrus notes and then it gets into that bitter finish and it lingers there, but not in a way that is so much that it that it overwhelms. So it's really nicely balanced. I thought it was great.
Yeah, and the last thing I'll say about it, and I'm noticing this now, a lot of times I can do pale ales and I like IPAs, but after one or two, I'm kind of done. And usually it's because like your tongue gets kind of thick.
Pucker. Yeah, it's that
And there's
pucker.
this doesn't have that. It
Yeah.
doesn't stay on you the way a regular IPA does.
My tongue's thick enough, actually.
Shit.
You can ask my wife.
Oh boy.
While we finish, I want to make my advertisement known to the world. Now I know all of our listeners, all 470 of you, follow me on LinkedIn, but I'm looking for a judge to come on this show. I'm looking for a George Hazel, George Russell, both federal judges. We are looking for a retired judge or current judge to come on the show.
George
We would love
Lippman?
you have to drink.
Drink.
Drink. Don't break the rule.
I didn't
don't have
say
to
that.
tote.
I didn't say it.
You
I
just
said his
it.
name. I didn't say
It's the same thing. It's like Beetlejuice, motherfucker. Like you say lit. Damn it. Thanks for joining us on Lawyers on the Rocks.
Hey, want to give a special shout out to Dan Rowe. Thanks for coming on. We really appreciate it. If you live in and around Baltimore, go check out Nepenthe Brewing in Hamden, Falls Road. Great spot. Highly recommend. Great brews, great people. Really appreciate your time coming on.
Did he say great Jews?
Great
Great
Jews.
brews.
Speaking of great Jews,
he said great
this
shoes.
is a great Jew right here.
Good Shabbos to all my friends out
Shabbos. Check us out online, lawyersontheRocks.com, Facebook and Instagram. Email us, lawyersontheRocks@gmail.com.
there. And YouTube.
Yes, YouTube.
Did you say JewTube?
YouBoob.
Oh, I got it wrong.
YouTube. That's my porn site.
This time until the next time,
Circumcised for us, by us, for you.
You got
pour yourself a drink, kick back, relax, pour yourself a drink until the next episode of Lawyers on the Rocks.
If we're not in jail or disbarred.